My family spent $12K on my sister's birthday, our shared birthday, and didn't invite me. My mom said, we can only afford one party, so I threw my own. My cousin's Instagram story stopped me cold on a Tuesday afternoon, phone in one hand, a mug of cold coffee in the other. Gold calligraphy, the Ashford Estate, September 14th, my birthday, our birthday, mine and my sister Lauren's, shared for 33 years, since the day we were born 11 minutes apart. Only one name was printed on that invitation, Lauren. I called my mother immediately, phone pressed so hard against my ear it left a mark. We can only afford one party, she said, like she was explaining a scheduling conflict instead of erasing me from my own birthday. $12,000. That's what the party cost. I'd learn the exact figure later, from a bill my aunt accidentally forwarded to the wrong group chat. $12,000, and somehow, not one line of that budget had room for my name. I stared at my phone for 10 minutes without blinking. People don't forget the same thing twice, not for 33 years. Forgetting is an accident. This was a decision made deliberately, by someone who'd had plenty of time to reconsider it and hadn't. My name is Sienna Bishop. I'm 33 years old. I work as a marketing coordinator for a mid-sized architecture firm, and for as long as I can remember, my birthday has existed in the shadow of my twin sisters. Lauren and I were born 11 minutes apart on September 14th, and from the time we were children, our mother, Diane, treated that shared date less like a coincidence and more like a competition she'd already decided the outcome of. Lauren got the bigger cake slice, because she was born first. Lauren got the themed party the year we turned 10, and I got a smaller version of the same theme 2 weeks later, so it wouldn't be redundant. I told myself for 3 decades that this was just how mothers sometimes are with twins, a little uneven, never malicious. I built an entire adulthood on that generous interpretation. The early red flags, in hindsight, had been piling up quietly for months before that Instagram story. My mother had started referring to Lauren, more and more often, as the successful one, a phrase that used to be a joke and had slowly calcified into something she said with a straight face. Lauren had also started canceling plans with me at the last minute, always vague, always something about work being crazy. I chalked it up to her job. I had no reason yet to think otherwise. I found out about the invitation the way you find out about most things you weren't meant to know, by accident, scrolling, on a day like any other. There's a specific memory I keep returning to from when we were 9. My mother had booked a photographer for Lauren's solo portraits that year, professional lighting, a rented backdrop, the whole production, because Lauren had just placed second in a regional spelling bee, and my mother wanted, in her words, something to remember it by. I'd placed in the same bee too, 1 round earlier than Lauren, out in round 4 instead of round 5. Nobody rented a backdrop for round 4. I stood at the edge of the driveway that afternoon, in my own dress, waiting for someone to notice I was dressed for pictures too, and nobody did. I didn't cry about it then. I filed it away instead, the way you file away 100 small moments before you're old enough to see the pattern they're quietly assembling into. By the time we hit our 20s, the pattern had a name in my own head, even if I never said it out loud to anyone. I called it the ledger. Every accomplishment of Lauren's got logged, celebrated, mentioned to relatives, printed and framed. Every accomplishment of mine got a nod, sometimes warm, always brief, and then the conversation moved somewhere else. I got my degree in marketing with honors. My mother asked at dinner that same week whether Lauren had heard back about her internship yet. I didn't resent Lauren for any of this. Not really. Not for a long time. She hadn't built the ledger. She just never once, in 3 decades, asked to see the other side of it. My cousin Danielle texted me the next morning. Did you get your invite? I hadn't. I told myself there had to be an explanation. A printing mix-up, an assumption that I already knew the details and didn't need a formal card. I told myself this while already knowing, somewhere underneath the story I was constructing, that it wasn't true. Then came the worst part. My Aunt Carol mentioned, almost in passing at a family group chat message, that my mother had told the extended family I was too busy with work to attend, that I'd sent my love. I hadn't sent anything. I didn't even know the party existed until my cousin's Instagram story showed me a venue with my name nowhere on it. My mother wasn't just excluding me from a party. She was actively rewriting who I was to the rest of the family, turning my absence into a choice I'd never made, so that nobody would ever think to ask the real question. My hands were cold when I set my phone down that morning, not shaking yet, just cold, the way your body gets before it decides how it's going to react. I texted Lauren directly, trying to keep it simple, trying not to sound as hollowed out as I felt. Did you know I wasn't invited to our own birthday party? She replied hours later. Hours on a message that should have taken her 10 seconds to answer honestly. Don't make this weird. I told myself maybe she genuinely didn't know the guest list details. That party planning had probably been entirely my mother's doing, and Lauren was just as in the dark as I was. I called my father next, hoping for something closer to a straight answer. Your mother handles the planning, he said, and hung up fast like a man ducking out of the path of a bullet that wasn't even aimed at him. That night, Lauren texted again, and this one landed somewhere I didn't expect a message to be able to reach. Mom said she'll save you a slice of cake, a slice, from my own birthday party that I hadn't been invited to. I read that text 4 times, waiting for it to feel like less than what it obviously was, and it never did. 3 days after the cake text, I did something I'm not proud of, though I don't regret it either. I muted the family group chat instead of leaving it, because leaving it would have meant explaining myself to 11 relatives, and muting it meant I could watch without anyone watching me watch. I told myself, just information gathering. Really, it was closer to picking at a wound to see how deep it went. What I found wasn't a smoking gun. It was smaller and somehow worse. A slow accumulation of small erasures I'd never have noticed if I hadn't been looking for them. My uncle asking in the chat, "Are both girls going to be there Saturday?" And my mother replying only, "Lauren's party starts at 6. Letting the question about both girls simply evaporate into a scheduling detail about one. A cousin posting a countdown graphic, 5 days until Lauren's big Rizio. The same age, incidentally, that I would also be turning, though nobody in that chat seemed to remember that fact belonged to 2 people. I told myself once again that I was reading too much into carelessness. Families are messy, group chats are fast and sloppy, and nobody proofreads them for fairness. But carelessness doesn't usually survive 11 separate instances without a single person catching it, and by the 40th or 50th message, I stopped being able to call it an accident, even inside my own head. 2 days before the date I'd eventually choose for my own party, a message landed in my inbox from a woman named Carly Renner. I recognized the name, Lauren's former best friend, someone who'd been a fixture at every family gathering for nearly a decade before she abruptly vanished from all of them 6 months earlier. Cut off, blocked, erased. After Lauren told the family Carly had become toxic. "I know what it feels like to be erased by your sister," Carly wrote, "if you ever want to talk." I told myself I should probably ignore it, that reaching out to someone my sister had cut off felt like it might make things worse, might look like I was picking a side in a conflict I didn't fully understand. But something about the specific phrase, "erased by your sister," sat in my chest and wouldn't leave. I agreed to meet her for coffee. Carly wrapped both hands around her mug like she needed the warmth more than the caffeine. "Your sister was fired from Belwick Analytics 4 months ago," she said. Inflated numbers on a couple of client reports. They let her go quietly. No public announcement, no drama, just an exit that HR handled off the books. "She told your family she got promoted." I sat there, coffee going cold in front of me, doing math I didn't want to do. My mother had sent flowers for that fake promotion, thrown a $12,000 party celebrating a job title that no longer existed. A week later, I ran into an old college friend, Priya Deshmukh, at a coffee shop near my office. Someone who, coincidentally, had worked at Belwick Analytics for the past 3 years in a completely different department. I mentioned Lauren's name in passing, expecting nothing. "Oh," Priya said, brow furrowing slightly. "Her desk's been empty for a while now. Months, actually. Maybe she transferred to another office? You know how office gossip is. Nobody really tracks who's still around." I didn't say a word back. I thanked her, said goodbye, and drove home, gripping the steering wheel with both hands, so tightly my knuckles ached by the time I pulled into my driveway. My mother had built an entire shrine. Flowers, a shopping trip to celebrate, a toast in front of 60 people, to a promotion that had never happened, at a party celebrating a birthday that had never included me. I tried, one more time, to fix this quietly. I called my mother and asked, carefully, neutrally, how Lauren's new role at Belwick was going, giving her every opportunity to tell me the truth herself. "She's thriving," my mother said, "senior account director. I've never been prouder of anyone in my life." I didn't confront her, not yet. I just kept planning. At Sunday dinner, a week before my planned event, my mother's living room had been quietly transformed into something closer to a museum exhibit than a home. 9 framed photographs from Lauren's party arranged across the mantel and side tables. Gold calligraphy place cards. A photo of the cake. Not one image included me. Not one caption, not one card. Acknowledged that the date on the calendar belonged to 2 daughters. At dinner, my mother stood, raised her glass, and said to Lauren, 30 years old. She was 33, same as me, but nobody at that table corrected the number because nobody at that table was thinking about accuracy. Senior account director, the daughter who makes me proud every single day. Not a word for me, not even a footnote, not even the smallest acknowledgement that a second daughter existed and shared that exact date. My Aunt Carol leaned in close as the toast ended and the table applauded. "Happy birthday, Sienna," she whispered. The only person at that table, out of 11 people, who said my name correctly on the day it actually mattered. Quick pause. If you want more stories like this in better quality, my Spotify's linked in the description. I drove home that night and didn't cry until I was in my own driveway. Engine off, hands finally still. Then I opened my laptop and finished the guest list for my own party. I want to pause here and be honest about something. This wasn't a story that involved police reports or courtrooms, but it did involve real people whose expertise mattered, and I think that's worth naming clearly, because it's what turned my hurt into an actual verifiable truth instead of just a feeling. I spoke with a therapist I'd been seeing on and off for 2 years, Dr. Renata Cho, LMFT, about the pattern I was finally seeing clearly for the first time. Not just this one birthday, but 3 decades of it. What you're describing, she told me during our session that week, isn't favoritism in the ordinary sibling sense. It's a consistent pattern of erasure, and the fact that it's escalated to actively rewriting your words to other people is significant. That's not neglect. That's something closer to control. I also reached back out to Priya, who, once she understood why I was asking, quietly confirmed through a mutual contact still at Belwick's HR department that Lauren's separation from the company had, in fact, been processed through standard offboarding procedures 4 months earlier, consistent with what Carly had told me. Nobody there used the word fired to me directly, out of professional discretion, but nobody denied it either, and the timeline matched exactly. And Carly herself, who had absolutely no reason left enough to lie to me, having already lost her place in this family entirely, became the person who confirmed the pattern that had apparently existed long before I ever noticed it. A sister who curated a version of herself for our mother's approval, and a mother who was more invested in that curated version than in either of her actual daughters. By the Friday before my own party, I had less than 48 hours to decide something that mattered more than the guest list or the cake order, whether to say anything at all, or whether to simply let my own celebration exist quietly, separately, without ever directly addressing what had happened. My hands wouldn't stop finding reasons to shake that week. Over the cake order, over the seating, over a single moment at the grocery store where I saw a display of gold balloons and had to leave my cart in the aisle and sit in my car for 10 minutes before I could drive home. I kept running the numbers in my head, over and over. $12,000 for one daughter, 0 for the other, 9 photos on a mantle, 1 slice of cake offered like a consolation prize. I decided finally, 2 days out, that I wasn't going to confront anyone directly. I wasn't going to call my mother and demand an apology, wasn't going to text Lauren a paragraph she'd never actually read with an open mind. I was going to do something smaller and I hoped more permanent. I was going to let the truth exist in a room full of people who actually knew me and let it speak for itself. I invited Carly. My party was small, 15 people, a back room at a restaurant I liked, mismatched candles because I ran out of matching ones and decided it didn't matter, a cake that said, in plain lettering, just Sienna, finally. 15 people who showed up because they wanted to, not because a family obligation required it. My friend Lee stood up partway through dinner and told the table about the night I drove 3 hours through a blizzard to rescue her car from a ditch outside Fort Wayne. No hesitation, because she'd called crying, and that was simply what you did for people you loved. Dana talked about the soup I'd brought to her apartment every day for a week when her daughter had pneumonia last winter. Small stories, true ones. Nothing my mother had ever once bothered to notice in 33 years of shared birthdays. Then Carly stood, glass raised. I know what it's like to be cut off by someone you trusted, she said. To be told you're the problem when all you ever did was tell the truth. The room went quiet. Sienna doesn't need to inflate a title to feel important, Carly continued. She doesn't need to fabricate a story to be interesting. She doesn't need to silence a friend to protect an image. She looked straight at me. Here's to a woman who's never once pretended to be something she's not, just to deserve a seat at the table. 15 glasses rose at once. My cousin Danielle filmed the last 30 seconds on her phone and posted it to Instagram. The clip landed at 11:47 p.m. By midnight, it had 47 views. One of them was Lauren. She watched it 4 times. Danielle told me later she could see the repeat views stacking up in real time. My mother called first. I let it ring out. Then Lauren started texting. Rapid fire. No punctuation. The way people type when they're not thinking anymore. Just reacting. Why is Carly at your party? What did she tell you? Call me right now. At 2 a.m., my phone rang again. Lauren Bishop. This time I picked up. I'm not going to pretend that conversation was some clean, cinematic confrontation with a tidy confession at the end. It wasn't. Lauren's voice was shaking, somewhere between fury and panic, and the first several minutes were mostly her demanding to know exactly what Carly had said, as if the content of the truth mattered more than the fact that it was simply true. Belwick, I said finally, cutting through it. 4 months ago. Inflated client numbers. You didn't get promoted, Lauren. You got let go. The line went silent for long enough that I checked to see if the call had dropped. You don't understand what it's like, she said eventually, quieter now. Mom needed one of us to be the success story. It couldn't be both of us. It's never been both of us. That's not a reason to erase me from my own birthday, I said. That's not a reason to let Mom tell an entire family I sent my love to a party I didn't know existed. She didn't have an answer for that. I don't think there was one. In the weeks that followed, the fabricated promotion unraveled entirely, not because I told anyone directly, but because the truth, once it exists in more than one mouth, tends to travel on its own. My Aunt Carol confronted my mother privately after putting the timeline together herself. My mother, when I finally spoke to her 3 weeks later, didn't apologize so much as she deflected. I didn't know about the job situation. I was just proud of my daughter, which told me everything I needed to know about which daughter she'd actually been protecting all along, and which daughter's version of events she'd simply decided, without evidence, to believe without question. Lauren eventually told the family the truth about Belwick herself, in a stilted group text that read more like damage control than honesty. Nobody threw her a party to celebrate that announcement. My relationship with my mother has not returned to what it was, and I've stopped expecting it to. We speak occasionally, in the careful, surface-level way people speak when a specific subject has been permanently fenced off between them. My relationship with Lauren exists now mostly in the space of birthday texts, sent on time and nothing more. No shared party, not that year or any year since. Carly and I, on the other hand, have become genuinely close. 2 women my own family tried, in different ways and for different reasons, to erase, sitting on the same side of the table now instead of opposite ends of it. My Aunt Carol, of all people, ended up becoming something I never expected, an ally with an actual paper trail of her own. She told me, weeks after the party, that she'd started quietly keeping her own version of the ledger years ago, without ever using that word for it. Just a private, growing unease about how differently her sister treated her 2 nieces. She showed me a folder on her phone of old photos, birthday parties, graduations, holidays, and pointed out, gently, dozens of moments I'd half forgotten where I was standing standing at the edge of a frame instead of the center of one. I should have said something sooner, she told me. I told myself it wasn't my place. I was wrong about that. I didn't need the apology by that point, not really, but I understood why she needed to give it. Dr. Cho and I spent several sessions after the party, working through something I hadn't expected to have to work through. The strange, disorienting grief of getting exactly what I wanted. I'd spent 33 years wanting my family to see the pattern clearly, and now that a stranger's toast at a restaurant had done in 90 seconds what 3 decades of quiet hurt never managed, I didn't feel triumphant so much as unmoored, like I'd been bracing against a door for so long that it finally opening sent me stumbling forward instead of walking through it. That's normal, Dr. Cho told me. Vindication and grief aren't opposites. They usually arrive together. She was right, though it took months for that to stop feeling like a contradiction. I also heard secondhand that Lauren eventually started her own therapy, something she'd apparently resisted for years, despite multiple people gently suggesting it. I don't know what she and her therapist talk about, and it's not really my business anymore. I hope, in whatever complicated, distant way you can hope something for a sister you're no longer close to, that she finds her way out from under the same ledger that shaped both of us, just from opposite ends of the table. This year, my birthday fell on a Sunday. I didn't check my cousin's Instagram story first thing in the morning, out of habit, before I even had coffee. I didn't need to. I already knew what my own celebration would look like because I was the one planning it, for myself, exactly the way I wanted it. 15 people again, give or take. A cake that said something different this year. 34 and never erased again. Dana brought soup as a joke. Lee toasted the blizzard story again, because apparently it's become tradition now. My mother sent a card. No calligraphy, no venue. Just a card, a week late, that said happy birthday. Sienna in handwriting I recognized from 33 years of birthdays I used to have to share space for. I put it on my own mantle, right in the middle, the only frame up there. It's not much, but it's mine, and for the first time in my life, that was always going to be enough.